Welcome back to Singapore Property Talk Law. With the general elections 2025 coming up, housing is, well, it's a massive topic, isn't it?
Absolutely huge. It always is, but maybe even more so this time.
Right. So, uh, our mission today is pretty simple, really. We want to try and cut through some of the political talk and just to give you a clear look at the main housing ideas from the major parties.
Yep, the actual proposals. We've gone through the manifestos available, PP, Workers' Party, Red Dot United, PSP, and the SDP. People's Alliance for Reform haven't released theirs yet, just to note.
Good point. Okay, so let's dive in. Maybe start with the PP.
Sure. So the People's Action Party, a big part of their plan is supply, building more flats. They're talking over 50,000 new ones in the next 3 years.
50,000, that's quite a number.
It is. And they're focusing on increasing flats with shorter waiting times, too. What's maybe newer is they explicitly mention more options for higher income couples and singles.
Acknowledging that demographic.
Yeah.
And they also mention desirable locations.
Yeah, places like Kuala Lumpur, Bay Shore, Mount Pleasant. They say they want to keep these accessible. Plus, continuing with town rejuvenation through VERS.
Keeping prime spots accessible. Interesting. It does feel like a continuation of focusing on supply, but with that tweak for higher earners and singles.
Exactly. It seems to be their main lever.
Okay, let's switch gears. What about the Workers' Party? Their angle seems a bit different.
Yeah, I'd say affordability is maybe the core theme there. Especially for first-timers. Their headline idea is linking the house price-to-income ratio for new buyers to the median income of those specific new homeowners.
Okay, so not the general population median, but the median of actual buyers. That's a specific calculation.
It is. It directly targets that affordability gap people talk about.
Yeah.
And they've also suggested 70-year lease BTO flats, lower price up front, but with an option to extend it later by 29 years.
A shorter lease option. Okay, what else?
They're proposing a universal buyback scheme for all older HDB flats. That tackles the whole lease decay worry head on.
Universal buyback.
Yeah.
That's bold.
It is. And finally, they're asking for more transparency on how land is valued by the chief valuer, the terms, the assumptions. That could have wider implications, for trust.
Right. Transparency and pricing is always a big topic.
Yeah.
Okay, Red Dot United. They have some pretty distinct ideas, too, if I remember.
They did. One major one is making every HDB estate eligible for CERS.
Every estate? Wow. The current scheme is very selective. That would be a massive undertaking.
Huge. Logistically, financially,
Yeah.
it'd be enormous. They're also talking about expanding public rental housing and introducing a rent-to-own scheme.
For who specifically?
Targeting the bottom 20% of earners or young single Singaporeans, so providing pathways other than immediate ownership.
Okay. And they had something about PRs and new citizens, too.
Yes, restricting them unless they've been citizens for 10 years or completed NS from buying resale flats with less than 79 years left on the lease. That seems aimed at managing demand in the older flat market.
Got it. So, managing demand and providing rental pathways. Now, Progress Singapore Party, the PSP, they're suggesting quite a shakeup with the BTO system itself.
Yeah, they call it the Affordable Home Scheme. The really eye-catching part is buyers wouldn't pay for the land cost up front.
No land costs. How does that work?
You'd only pay the land cost component if and when you sell the flat on the resale market. It would slash the initial purchase price.
That would certainly make it more affordable initially. Big change.
Very big. They also propose letting singles buy BTOs and resale flats from age 28 down from 35.
Lowering the age for singles.
Yeah.
That's come up before.
And they have this millennial apartment scheme idea, basically affordable rental apartments for young couples and singles, plus building more public flats ahead of demand to cut waiting times.
Building ahead of demand. Okay, proactive. All right, last one. Singapore Democratic Party, SDP. They also had a scheme focused on cost, right?
Yes, the non-open market scheme, or NOM flats. Similar principle to the PSP idea, actually lowering prices by excluding land costs from the initial purchase price. Different name, likely different mechanics, but same core idea.
Seems like that concept of separating land cost is gaining traction across different parties.
It does seem that way. The SDP also suggests a young families priority scheme giving balloting priority to first-timer families, especially those with kids, for sale of balance flats or new BTOs in non-mature estates.
Targeting young families needing homes quickly.
Exactly. And one more point from them, allowing single-parent families and low-income households to rent flats for 2 years at a time without needing such frequent reviews, giving them more stability.
More stability in rental. Makes sense. Okay, so we've covered quite a bit. PP focusing on supply and access, WP on affordability metrics and lease options, RDU on universal answers and rental, PSP on removing upfront land costs, and SDP also on land costs plus specific priority groups.
It's a real mix, isn't it? You see themes, emerging affordability is clearly central, but tackled in very different ways. Accessibility for singles keeps coming up, lease lengths and what happens towards the end of the lease, that's there too, and redevelopment, of course.
Definitely. It really makes you wonder, looking at all these different approaches, everything from just building more to changing the lease structure to these schemes separating out land costs. Which of these ideas, if any, were implemented, do you think would actually have the biggest impact?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Which policy lever would most fundamentally shift things for Singapore's housing? Or maybe even for your own plans?
Something for everyone to think about as we get closer to the election. Thanks for breaking that down.
My pleasure. Lots to consider.